I am not Sandra Jones. She is sick. And so I have been called up to pinch hit for her today. And so you're going to have to deal with me now. Sandra's not been well all week, and so I know you would join me in praying for her in hopes that she feels better. Also, Tuesday was her birthday, and so she was sick on her birthday, and I'm sure she did not enjoy that. But I know you want to say happy birthday to her, right? So if you would really loudly say, "Happy birthday, Sandra."
Happy birthday, Sandra.
And I hope the video got that, because we'll make sure she sees that this week when she returns. Sandra, on her first Sunday here with us, she reached inside of her pocket and pulled out a tube of lipstick and said she was the first senior pastor here who would be putting on lipstick and keeping that in her pocket. Well, I keep in my pocket some chapstick. And it's because my wife tells me when I preach, I lick my lips too much, and I look like a bad impression of LL Cool J. So I'm going to put this on now, honey, okay? Here we go. I have not been able to watch much of the Olympics in Rio, but I've been keeping up with the highlights and results. I have lots of favorite athletes and favorite Olympic sports. Some of my favorite sports are gymnastics, swimming, basketball, and track and field. This year, I've enjoyed watching Michael Phelps make history. I've enjoyed Simone Biles, Simone Manuel, and Katie Ledecky. One of my favorite athletes, however, is not representing the red, white, and blue. Sorry. It's a sprinter named Usain Bolt. He has quite a last name. How appropriate for him to have a last name like Bolt. I like him because he is dominant and has incredible confidence. He runs the 100 and the 200, and this week it was reported that he has never run a mile. Now, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I'm sure he uses that as a way to, intimidate the competition, and I'm quite sure it's probably working. Among my favorite events are the relays. I've always been a fan of the relays. The excitement, the different stories, the athletes, and the closeness of the races all make for an exciting event. In a relay, usually 4 athletes are on the same team trying to be as fast as possible. Each runs the same distance, one after the other, until the last one completes the race. This last runner is the anchor of the group and is oftentimes the strongest runner. Guess who is anchoring the 2016 Jamaican relay team? Usain Bolt. I'm still rooting for the USA, but the Jamaicans will be tough to beat. In relays, the athletes rely on each other. They must trust each other and have faith in each other. Each one knows that the race is not all about them. Each one knows that the others depend on them. Each one knows that they need to focus on their part, and when their part is done, they root for their teammates. One of the relays in track and field is the 4x100 relay. This means that each of the 4 runs 100 meters for a total of 400 meters. Do you know what the world record is for the individual 400? Of course you don't, because no one walks around with those times just logged in their head. Well, the record is 43.18 seconds. That is really fast. That's one time all the way around the track. 43 seconds. And that is Michael Johnson, who did this several years ago. You might remember him. He had the gold shoes and had the unconventional running style. He ran straight up like this the whole race, all the way to the finish line. 43.18 seconds. Do you know the world record for the relay version of that event? That time is 36.84 seconds. That's almost 7 seconds faster than Michael Johnson running on his own. None of those runners could beat Michael Johnson on their own, but together they can. The same is true of the mile run. The world record for the fastest mile is 3 minutes, 43.13 seconds. Do you know the relay version? 2 minutes, 54.29 seconds, almost a whole minute faster. Again, none of those runners could beat the individual champion, but together they can. Have you ever wondered why the relay produces better results? The individual race requires faith in yourself. You do your part and run your best race, and you receive your own individual award. But when you are on a relay team running the same distance, you must not only have faith in yourself, but also in the others who run the race with you. Your run is not for yourself, but for those who depend on you. The relay race is a race that proves that tall tasks are best accomplished with others working with you on the same goal. Faith in yourself and in the ones who run with you. Our text today has something to say to us about running a race. The writer of Hebrews is writing a sermon to the inner circle of the Christian church in Rome about faith and perseverance. The writer, who could honestly be a woman named Priscilla, wanted to give them assurance after showing signs of being weary and tired. They were enduring oppression and injustice, and she didn't want them to lose faith or hope in their long race for justice. What is justice? Justice is making crooked places straight. It's the healing of the systemic diseases that face humanity. I'm talking about diseases like poverty, sexism, human trafficking, racism, bigotry in any form, and many others. Justice, I will add, is not revenge. Justice seeks to heal wounds. Revenge seeks to inflict wounds on others because of the wound you have. One of the greatest analogies of justice is one from Malik El-Shabazz. He said about the progress of justice that it's like having a knife stabbed in your back 9 inches. Then someone removes it 3 inches. That's not progress. If they remove it 6 inches, that's still not progress. If they remove the knife completely, it's still not progress because the wound has yet to heal. And then he added, the powers that be have yet to remove the knife and won't even acknowledge that the knife is there. Shabazz was not seeking revenge, but justice. If he wanted revenge, he would not be talking about the knife in his back. Instead, he would be talking about placing a knife in the back of another. My prayer for the church is that it would be in the business of looking for the knives in people's backs, removing them, and then helping them to heal. In chapter 11 of Hebrews, the writer reminds the inner circle of some of the cloud of witnesses who have done this very vital work before. The people of faith who were oppressed, endured great injustice, and who won great victories for the faithful. These people included Abraham, Moses, Sarah, Rahab, and the prophets. She tells them that they accomplished these things by faith. They weren't done selfishly or for themselves, but for those who ran the race before them and for those who will run the race after them. She describes this record of witnesses as if they are runners in a relay, all working for justice by faith. They partnered with God to bring about the will of God. It was a sermon of encouragement. This sermon is in our Bibles to give us the same encouragement today. We are followers of Christ who are expected to join in the race for justice and righteousness. She tells us in chapter 11 and verse 33 that through faith they conquered kingdoms and brought about justice. Not only that, but realized promises, shut the mouths of lions, put out raging fires, escaped from the edge of the sword, and found strength in weakness. All of this was not done for themselves, but for those who are not yet able to pick up the baton to run. So she's telling us the same thing, that we should also run the race that's laid before us, not as individuals running on our own, but to run the race for justice and righteousness as one team, because justice is a work of faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in those who run with us, and faith in the one who gives us strength, Jesus. Those are encouraging words. They've been encouraging for me this week in preparation. You know by now that I'm passionate about social justice, especially so in the area of racial justice. This is not only for members of my own race, but of any group of people who endure racism, injustice, and oppression. This, in fact, is why I'm at this church. It wasn't by fluke or by accident. It was very intentional for me to serve in a church like Johns Creek with people who are committed to fighting for justice. I read and study about issues of race. I have discussions with people across all sorts of lines about racism and other forms of oppression. I work to inform people of what racism is and what it is not. I work to build on the cloud of witnesses that have come before me and who works still inspires me. Some of those names you would know, like John Wesley and Gandhi and Rosa Parks and Dr. King. Others you may not know, like Whitty White, Michael Emerson, Dorothy Saul. These people and a host of others have run their legs of this race, and some of them are still running. I want to run with them. This work has been instilled in me by my family, by my faith, and my educational institutions. It was at Morehouse College that it was driven deep into my heart that I was to be ashamed to die until I've won some victory for humankind. It was there I was taught that I have rights and privileges that I now enjoy that have been paid for with the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors. This work in justice has also been taught to me by my church as a child and as a young man. It was the church that taught me that faith without works is dead. The church taught me that Jesus was on the side of the oppressed and that he had come to preach the good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, and that the oppressed would go free. It was my baptism ceremony that asked me and all of you, as we heard today, do you accept the freedom and power God gives us to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves? These lessons are not things that I take lightly or as empty words. These are words that thrust us all onto the relay track of the race for justice. It is a sacred obligation. I take that obligation seriously and trying to be a part of the solution. My worst days are when evil, oppression, hatred, and injustice take lives. So you could probably imagine how angry and grief-stricken and frustrated I've been recently with the state of affairs in our nation. Now, I don't believe things are as bad as some say they are or as good as others say they are. But if you turn on the news at night, even last night, you see there are problems. What breaks my heart the most about all of this is that one of the institutions responsible for my fight for justice has been blind and silent to these issues for too long. The American church has tended to be silent to issues of injustice. I don't understand. I don't understand how those who are tasked with being disciples for Jesus Christ have dropped the baton on the track and are so slow to pick it back up. I don't understand how those tasked with preaching the good news to the poor choose to assist those who take from the poor so the rich can have more. I don't understand how those tasked with bringing recovery of sight to the blind could still be so blind to the enormous injustices in their communities and even inside of its own walls. I don't understand how those tasked with bringing release to the captives can support locking up more and more and more. I don't understand how those tasked with freeing the oppressed could be so silent they become a safe haven for the oppressors. It all breaks my heart and quite honestly puts lots of people's lives at jeopardy, including my own. That first full week of July was one that I wish I could just erase from my memory. Every morning that week, I woke up, it seemed, to more injustice and more violence. That Sunday, Officer Richard Gray and I stood before you and prayed a prayer that we wrote together. We both hurt by that week's events on both sides. However, some in our communities and families only grieve the pain from one side. It seems we often fail to realize that we can't fight for justice for one without fighting for justice for the other. I've been so happy to be able to work with clergy of this church, meeting with law enforcement and members in the community and other clergy to talk about how we can partner together to deal with the issues we see. Sandra and I are both in the Citizens Police Academy in Johns Creek because we both care deeply about what we've seen around the country. You know now that Sandra's son is in law enforcement. I pray for his safety, and she prays for the safety of my son. In the church, there aren't separate relay teams for all the different races. We don't worship a different version of Jesus. Jesus only puts one team on the track. Through faith, that team must run the race for justice together. I started this sermon talking about the relays in this year's Olympics, and I hope I'm not being a spoiler, but last night were the swim relays, and rest assured, both the men and women's American teams won. The anchors for the relays, for the men and women, have both already won gold medals and secured victory for us last night. The anchors for a relay team are expected to bring the team home to victory. If the team already had a lead, the anchor is expected to maintain it or increase it. If the team was behind, the anchor is expected to make up the difference. There have been many times where the anchor on the relay team received the baton and had a lot of work to do. The others on the team can only watch as their anchor works their magic. If I were running a relay race, which you know from earlier, I'm not running anywhere. That's not going to happen. But if I were, my anchor, I would hope to be Usain Bolt. If I were swimming in a relay, I'd want Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky or Simone Manuel as my anchor. In this relay for justice, Jesus is the anchor. Jesus is the one who makes up the difference. When we fail and get behind in the race, when the clock is not on our side, when the race seems lost, that's when we pass the baton to Jesus and ask him to rescue us. He is the anchor. This is why justice is a work of faith, because you can't win without Jesus. And you can't lose with Jesus. Working together, runners run the relay. Each does his or her part for the benefit of the team. The writer of Hebrews said it like this: "Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarded its shame, and was taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God." She's telling us that if we run this race, having faith in ourselves, in each other, and in Jesus, who is our anchor, he will finish the race. But we do have a part to play. We must take the time that we are given to do what is right until it's time to pass the baton to another. Because justice is a work of faith in yourself and the ones who have run before and will run after, and faith in Jesus. I close with a poem that I will never forget from my days at Morehouse. Michael sings in our choir, and I think he probably already knows where I'm going with the rest of this. I have only a minute, just 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, I can't refuse it. I didn't seek it, and I didn't choose it. But it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give an account if I abuse it. It's just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.